Hey guys, Evans here. Super excited to chat with you. Happy Tuesday. We're gonna have a couple special guest speakers coming in a moment, but really excited to share today's topic and conversation. It's about learning those habits that we need to develop, or those skills that we can develop, so we don't have to stress out about the scale and all those pieces anymore. And there's two scales. There's the weight scale that I think that sometimes people have a lot of stress about, as well as the food scale a lot of times people are stressed out about. So to help us with this, we have Katie, who's going to be here with us, and then Alexis is probably going to, Alexis, um, Alyssa is going to come join us as well in the conversation. Cool. So, hey guys, good to see you. Thank you for joining us for our show here. I'm really excited to share with it. So, some of the challenges that I've seen people have, and many of our clients, and if you're watching this, you probably had this challenge yourself in some degree, is this. You're frustrated. Maybe you've gone through the diet roller coaster. You're tired of being on that roller coaster, and maybe the scale's not doing what it's supposed to do, or you're tired of weighing and measuring stuff, or you're tired of weighing and measuring yourself. So I want to, provide some guidance or some context to help people, to figure out how can they move out of this level of frustration of dieting and all that. So maybe Katie, you could start off with maybe some things you've heard that people are experiencing right now, and the information that we're going to share, how it's going to benefit them.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay. So you said like what people are struggling with right now, right? And how this information is going to benefit them. So right now, I think for people that are just starting, it's kind of a lot of information, like learning how to weigh and track. And it's like, do I have to do this forever for the rest of my life? Spend all of this time weighing out my food every morning? So this is kind of speaks to like, what does a path look like going forward? Like why it's important to learn those fundamentals now, and how like it serves you going down the road so that you have these sustainable skills. But you don't necessarily have to plan out what I'm going to eat at the restaurant every single time I go out, or weigh and measure your food for the day every single day for the rest of your life. So looking at a roadmap for how we might plan over time, how to get beyond that.
And I know I didn't ask you this prior we got on to the show today. Do you weigh and measure everything you eat?
I don't weigh and measure everything that I eat. I think that there's periods of time that it becomes more important for me to. For example, like if I'm like, oh, like last week was a rough week, like I think I need to kind of circle back and look at how much I'm actually eating. I'll start weighing it out again. I weigh out a lot of my meals if I'm trying to look at, okay, like how much egg salad did I have for lunch? But I've gotten intuitively fairly confident with looking at something and knowing like that's a good amount of food for me. But it's taken a lot of time to get to that point.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point where everybody wants to get to. Alyssa, any thoughts you're having around this?
Someone who is like currently working towards fitness goals, definitely I think when you're first starting out, it's really important to weigh and measure, or at least get some sort of idea of like how much am I eating. Because when I first started, like I definitely did not weigh and track everything, and I'm still working towards that. But when I did start doing it, I was like, oh, that was way more than I thought it was when I ate it. So it just brought awareness to me. So like weighing and measuring doesn't have to be looked at as like sort of a restricted thing. It can be like sort of like a discovery thing. Okay, let me learn how much 4 ounces of chicken is, or whatever the case may be, or like cheese. I used to eat a lot of cheese, like a lot, and then I would realize, oh, okay, this, I thought this was just a little bit of cheese, but it actually was quite a bit, and adding and taking away from some of the food that I could eat. So sort of viewing it as like a discovery thing, it's a good mindset to have.
Awesome. And one of the things we're going to talk about, in here is how to build those sustainable skills so we all can get to the place where we don't have to weigh and measure anymore. And specifically what Katie talked about was this idea of intuitive eating. Alyssa talked about tracking, and Katie talked about intuitively eating. So just so everybody has a good definition of what that is, Katie, do you want to like define for us like what is intuitive eating?
So I think that it comes down to knowing like how much you should be eating, without using the scale, knowing how much you need, to feel good, to have energy every day, to support yourself, whatever your goals are, whether it's building mass or just maintaining. For me, I just want to maintain where I'm at. So knowing how much to eat, when to stop eating, and just like feeling good and confident in it. I don't like spend every day wondering like, should I have eaten that? Should I not have eaten that? So it's just kind of like a confidence too around the food choices that you make.
Nice. I like to, even couple that with this, the ability to strive towards or maintain, like you said, your body composition while allowing yourself to enjoy social events. You know what I mean? The ability to eat out the way that makes you feel your best and look your best without the rigidity of tracking and perfect guidelines. And that takes a lot of skills, so in order to do that, we have to, and I call that nutritional freedom. Like I can choose, what I want to eat, when I want to eat. And that's going to give us some loving in there. So let's talk about that foundation, because in order to get there, this is not the diet pyramid. I heard, the guys from WAG call it the nutrition freedom pyramid. And I so like that idea. So I would say like building a house, and I know you're in the process of doing some cool stuff with your home, but building a house, like the toughest part is getting that foundation set. Just from someone who came out of like the home industry to some degree, you got to get the permitting right. You have to you have to figure out where the septic tank is going to be. You have to dig a certain depth. You got to make sure it's not raining that day. If you're a rainy season, good night. That's going to take forever for the foundation to set. And just when you thought you had an inspection, before you even get the foundation down, you have to lay the footers, where these holes where you actually pour concrete, which is the base of your foundation, which is the base of your home. So a lot gets done that no one ever comes up to your house and like, dude, you have a cool looking foundation. Like there's nothing cool, there's nothing sexy about the foundation, but it's the most important part, and I think is 80% of the process. So I think it's the most mundane part is the foundation, as well as the most challenging part. Because it's a space where what you learn in that foundation, I think one of the biggest things that you learn in the foundation is just to honor your commitments you made to yourself. So can you talk a little bit about this idea of honoring these commitments we make to ourselves?
Yeah. So it's building that self-confidence and that self-efficacy. Unfortunately, I think when you look at the person who lets you down most in your life, it's yourself. And like, that's not to sound like dark and twisted. It's just that it might be that like you set your alarm for a certain time and then you snooze it. So all these little habits, I'm going to work out today. And then the day goes and you're like, I'm not working out today. So all these little things happen that we break these promises to ourselves. So by building self-efficacy and self-confidence, by keeping commitments to yourself, you get the ball rolling. And now you're like, I can do this. Like, I feel good when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I think it's challenging because it's not necessarily things that like you start the program and you're like weighing and measuring your food and you're like, but like I'm eating the same things. I'm not going to lose weight eating the same things, but you're building these skills that are going to have these results like miles down the road. You just don't necessarily see it right then. So it can be challenging. But by building that confidence in yourself, now you can do it.
That's awesome. That's money right there. And that's what it is really. It's we've all experienced it. Alyssa, I know you have a board that you have set up, like a win-loss board or something like that. To help you with your commitments to yourself. Talk about it. How's it going? Let us know what's going on.
Yeah. So I took the idea sort of from someone that Evans had a conversation with a while back about, keeping the X on the calendar. Like you have to keep going and doing the thing that you committed to. So I have this really large, like whiteboard poster thing right on the wall in my dining room. So it goes like leading into the kitchen. You can see it. It's right there. And I have listed on it all of the habits that I want to establish. And then I have dates. So then every day I go through and I either mark it with a red X, meaning I didn't do it, or a green check mark, meaning I did. Now, at the end of each day, I sort of look and I'm like, okay, I don't beat myself up about whether or not like I got every single thing, because I know that that may not be realistic for where I am right now. But my goal is that over time, more and more of those habits become green check marks. So it's just sort of a way to motivate myself. And literally sometimes, like if I haven't worked out that day, and for me, if I don't work out first thing in the morning, it's really challenging for me by the end of the day to work out. But some days I'm just like, oh, I didn't earn my green check mark, so I'm just gonna do something, whether it be like a 15, 20-minute quick something, and then I can be like, okay, I did it. You know, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. So it's just a sort of way to hold myself accountable, and then for my family to hold me accountable too. So like my husband will be like, oh, you didn't do the green thing today. Or just didn't track that day. Oh, are you stopping? Are you not doing that anymore? So it's just sort of a fun way to take the pressure off of myself and sort of gamify it a little bit. So like, okay, can I get the green check mark today? And the reality is that the stuff that's on there are just choices. It's not something that, like is impossible for me to do. It's just something that it's going to be as easy to do as it is not to do. And it's just a choice that I need to make on whether or not I want to earn that check mark.
That's phenomenal. And that's what it all is, really, right? It's easy to do, but it's also easy not, and that's where accountability comes in. And we know that a lot of people fail because they lack that accountability that they need to be successful. So powerful thing. So, when someone first starts and we want to like get to the place where Katie is, where she can eat intuitively, no problem at all. And when she wants to get to that space, what you need to do is not set big goals, right? So initially your coaching may start off with looking at your habits and making small tweaks. Like one small tweak you can look at is, am I eating out 4 days a week, whether it's lunch or something else? And then if so, can I eat out 3 days a week? It's nothing major. Like it's not, I have to go keto, not against keto. We have clients on keto. Not that you have to go, XYZ whole organic, or you have to do, you can just say, hey, I stop at Wawa and I eat a sandwich at Wawa every day. Can I not eat a sandwich at Wawa today? Or I'll eat a sandwich with Wawa with less mayo on it. Just little things, in there. So the first place where we spend the most amount of time is really protecting that confidence that you have in yourself and building that trust with yourself, like Katie said. And then after that, we want to learn about the food. And I think that's where tracking comes in. So Katie, you want to talk about like what are like we know everything we eat turns into calories, but like when we talk about the composition of food, what does that mean? Like, what is all that about?
So when we look at the composition of food, like usually we're looking at our macronutrients, so protein, carbs, and fat. So is what I'm eating mainly a protein, mainly a carb, mainly a fat? And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, like what is oatmeal? Is oatmeal carb? Is oatmeal fat? So just by beginning to track, you get an understanding of what you're eating. And then you kind of build an awareness like, wow, I eat like 80% carbs during the day. Like a lot of people realize, wow, I really don't eat very much protein. So you just start to get this awareness of what you're actually eating when you're looking at that composition of the food.
Huge. So what methods can people use to track and learn about the composition of their food?
I mean, like the one you'll hear a lot that we use often is like a MyFitnessPal. So using like an app to track your food. And that's going to break down like how much protein, how much carbs, how much fat is in, for example, like the chicken that you're eating. I'm sure there's other apps that you can use when we're looking at like portion sizes. There's tools you can use outside of an app. We can look at food scales. We can look at using your hand. But I think that app is like a really big one.
Absolutely. And they've done all the heavy work for us, right? They already looked it up. I remember when I first started to lose weight, I don't know if MyFitnessPal was even around. I used like Livestrong website, back in the day. And then my mentor, he had a book that you can buy, like the USDA's book on food, and I'd go and look up and like, okay, this much protein is in chicken breast, and you start learning that the whole chicken is not composed the same. Right, there's certain parts of the chicken that has more fat in it than other parts, and certain parts have more protein in it than other parts. So it's really important. I think the first, once we've kind of started making we're honoring ourselves is the first point, right? And that's just like, what did I commit to? I'll do it. And many people fall off the first point. It takes time because, like you said, how many times do we sleep in when the alarm clock says go? If our job wouldn't fire us, we'd probably show up late all the time, because we're not used to that component. So the next step is like learning, okay, when I'm eating, what am I eating? Because we want to get to this place where you can just pick up food and eat whatever you want and make portions. You can start learning, what does a portion look like? So you start learning, okay, this is, I give an example. We were talking about, wheat thins earlier today, and you were like 16 crackers is like one portion, that they have in there. It's 31 grams, and I think it was like 20 grams of carbs or something like that, but we have to start learning, okay, that's what a portion looks like, for you. And everything is very individualized. So tracking also allows you to see, like, how do you feel, in there. And actually that takes us to the third step in there, which is, the power of measuring the effects of food. So what are a couple of things, maybe 2 or 3 things, and maybe you'll do 5 things, I'll do 5 things that we can see, like when we're measuring, what are we looking at and how we're affected by the food that we're eating. So we know we have the commitments we made to ourselves. Now we're understanding what our food is made up of and what that looks like. What are some benefits of seeing, or that third layer, which is these effects of food?
Yeah, I think this is a really cool, really important one. And like, it's great to have like a food journal or something that you write down. This is how the day went. This is what I ate, and this is how I felt. You can look at, when I'm eating more of something, am I putting on weight? Like, does the scale go up the next day? Like, if I eat a super carb heavy dinner, what happens on the scale the next day? Just so you start to notice how things are affecting your weight gaining, your weight loss, your mood. So you might notice that eating certain things, and now, like, you have this total like slump in energy, you're not feeling great. Same thing with like performance in the gym. Maybe you notice that if you have carbs right before your workout, like you're on at that workout, you have all of this energy. On the other hand, like, I'm someone who, I don't like eating right before I work out. I feel like it sits in my stomach and makes me lethargic. So everyone's different. There's not going to be like a cookie cutter thing, like you should always eat carbs before your workout and you're going to feel great. So playing around with it and seeing what makes you feel good. And then maybe like changing up your macros a little bit, like seeing, oh, if I eat more protein, more carbs, less carbs, and seeing how that affects you. But the most important thing is like to be aware of it. Because if you change things and you're not like taking mental note or physical note, then you're not going to start to put together these patterns like, okay, every time I eat carbs, this is what happens.
That's awesome. And that kind of leads into, what I was thinking about is, it's only when we're aware, right? So how do we know if this thing is having an effect on our body? Well, we think about like our body is run through a series of hormones, and this is not a hormone talk, but it's important to understand that no different than like a woman's cycle runs this 21-day cycle, 7 days off, 21 days, 7 kind of thing. Well, same way as the way our body deals with food and different things like that. So, we can look and say, okay, I've been doing this for a certain period of time, maybe 3 weeks, what happened over the course of 3 weeks? And at 3 weeks, we should really see it happen. I see a lot of times when people eat predominantly carbohydrates and they decrease their carbs to a healthy amount, they may experience a little energy slump for a week or two, but then that third week, you see the energy comes back. I was just looking at a research study earlier, and they were talking about on an exercise side, how when people stop exercising for 2 weeks, they don't really lose any lean mass. And it's at the end of the third week where they start catabolizing and losing that lean mass. So the way you do that is you got to keep your macros and your calories the same. So you're eating the same macros and you're eating the same calories. Again, this is a little higher level. So if we're at the point of just like eating 4 or 5 times a day, or picking healthy choice of food, or knowing what macros is, you're not picking this yet. But when you're at that space where you've learned those skills, now you want to dial into some consistency, because that's going to really help you start noticing things that are going on in your body. And you'll start noticing that, hey, if I remove this food from my body for a period of time, I may feel better. So I know I went through seasons where I had like a slight gluten intolerance, and I took gluten out my diet, and I felt leaner. I didn't change my macros at all. I didn't change my calories at all. It's just the way my body processed wheat gluten. At other seasons of my life where I didn't have that challenge. I had one portion of my life where I was kind of like stuck, and I had to take milk out. It was weird. I took milk out, had the same macros, and I was able to cut. I had more energy and had more mental focus. So just paying attention to, maybe I do have food tolerances, but if I'm switching every week, I won't see it. And I needed whatever switch I make to do it long enough. And typically you're looking at 3-4 weeks to be able to see that. I love how you said journaling, because that's a huge one. Journaling, allows you to see it. And even if you're not a big journaler, like, find a way to just bring awareness. I think journaling has a lot of psychological and physiological effects. When you start doing a lot in the business world, we call it retrospective, right? You look back and go, what went well, what didn't go well? What were my triggers? You start learning these things about yourself, because, that's what's going to allow you to have freedom. Oh, I was stressed out and I eat cookies when I'm stressed out. Okay. How can I structure my life not to have the cookies available? How comes cookies go into every talk? But how can I structure my life not to have the cookies around? So when I'm stressed out, the cookies are not an option. Or what am I really craving? Is it I'm craving nutrients for my brain? What's happening? How do I feel? And operating in that realm. So good. So we've built that foundation, right? Which was developing those simple habits and systems in there. And then we're eating mindfully, right? And now we're understanding, with the composition of food, what is a protein, what is a fat. Now we're at the place where we're measuring, and we're seeing the effects of the measuring the food. What's the next phase?
The next part is taking on like challenging situations. So think like weddings, holidays, places where typically you're looking at a big spread of a lot of really delectable food that might not necessarily fit within your macros, which can be challenging, whether you're tracking or not tracking.
Absolutely. I think if anything, it's one of the most challenging, the hardest part of the whole equation, because it's kind of funny when you start actually like tracking during those periods of time, and by then you're guesstimating, so you're really fine-tuning a skill set, right? You've eaten before, and I would say after weighing and measuring for several months, you should start, like, before you weigh it, guess how much it is. So you're like, I think that's about 100 grams of chicken. You put it on there and you see where you are, and if you're getting closer and closer, then you're getting more attuned to how much the volume of food is, so you can be free in the future. Because okay, yeah, that's too much. I can't eat all that, or that's not enough. How do you know that's? Because you built the skill set with the scale. We're talking about, for a lot of people, maybe a couple-year journey into it, because the first 2 steps, I think the first 2 to 3 steps may take a year to master, if not longer, depending on what your habits were prior to. But yeah, that's the really traveling is another one. You go away for a period of time, and you're at the airport, you need to eat there, or you decide to eat at a restaurant, or just the weekends. I've seen a weekend throw someone back a week. Like they reset every single week because of what they picked on the weekend, because they can easily go into a nutritional surplus, and then now they're trying to manage the weekend. But a big thing to do, I think, is to not aim for perfection. And since you've kind of like mastered this, to some degree, can you talk a little about that, not aim for perfection, and what your thought process is around that?
Yeah, I think it's having realistic expectations, right? So when I go to my big Italian family's Christmas dinner, I don't go in and think I'm going to have half of a ravioli and that's it. I know I'm going to have a plate of raviolis, right? They're going to be delicious. So having realistic expectations about how much you're going to eat. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go into it thinking like, I'm going to eat like a big giant bowl of it. But going in and knowing like, okay, like here's about how much I want to have. So you have like a realistic expectation of how much you're going to eat. And then you can look back and think like, how did I do last year? Like, can I do a little bit better this year? Maybe last year I had a goal going in and then I just blew it out of the water when I saw the cookie plate. So maybe this year I go in and it's like, I'm going to have 2 cookies instead of eating half of the plate of cookies. So just kind of doing like a retrospective and thinking like how to do last year, what could go better this time, and setting a realistic expectation for yourself. And then I'd say like afterwards, don't beat yourself up over it. If you have an extra ravioli, it's okay. So just looking back, thinking about what could go better, but not like kicking yourself for a week afterwards. And then like, you know, like I need to fast for the next day, not eat anything. Just get back to normal afterwards, and just learn what you can from it.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And I think that's what's going to build that confidence in yourself, is realizing it's okay. Now, Alyssa, I didn't really talk to you much about it here, but, you know, one of the things that we talk about in this is, you know, being intentional, having a game plan, and really executing. And, you know, and these are all the things that, you know, Katie just covered, but that's like the biggest thing. So maybe Katie, if you can Katie, Alyssa, if you could share with us, like, what's a challenge that you experience as you're mastering? Because I think you're close to this phase here where you're at the point where you're tackling those difficult situations. What's a challenge that maybe we didn't cover, or something you experienced that you may want to share?
So I guess a big challenge, you know, it spoke to me when you were talking about how you reset on the weekends. Like, you may do well during the week, and then the weekend just sort of like, take 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of thing. I've definitely seen that happen for me, because on the weekends, a lot of the time, even though I have the time to cook, I don't want to. You know, like I spend all week planning my meals and stuff like that. So I still want to track, which I do, but a lot of times I'm going for quick food, you know, because I'm doing things around the house. I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, I'm, you know, doing laundry and going grocery shopping. So I'm like, oh, what's the quickest food that I can have? And a lot of the times it's like processed, like chicken sausage and that sort of thing that's full of sodium, or like rice cakes, or just like easy things that I can just eat and not have to worry about it. So I think one of the things is like, how do you tackle the weekends? If by the weekend you're sort of like exhausted, especially during this time where stress levels are a little bit higher, maybe you're working more than you had been before, you know, life happened, that's happening. So how do you tackle that and put in systems to prevent yourself from just going for what's easy instead of what's going to help move you forward?
That's awesome. Well, one of the things to kind of help with that is setting what is my intention over the weekend, you know, meaning, you know, where, you know, what do I want to accomplish? For a lot of people, they don't normally eat breakfast at the same time. So, you know, maybe instead of going after 5 meals on the weekend, you eat 4 meals, do bigger meals, you know, structure. You may even do 3 meals. Like, there's no, like, you know, there's a diet for every number of meals you need to eat, you know, out there, and they all work, you know. So it's just looking at, okay, what does my weekend look like? And if I'm running around like crazy in the morning, I'm cleaning the house, I'm doing this, and, you know, I'm not really in the mood to eat, I don't have to. But then I can plan for something a little bit bigger, and typically the bigger item gives me more decadence, because now the fat calories, you know, that I would use in breakfast, I can have breakfast and brunch, you know, as a breakfast and lunch as brunch, you know, so to speak. And so that's something you can do in there. Always having pre-cooked food, you know, going into the weekend, you know, helps. So you can quickly do things, you know, and that helps me a lot. So I'm not going into this heavy level of cooking if I'm not in the mood for cooking, you know. If I'm going to eat out, pre-plan that in there, and then, you know, okay, this is the meal that I'm eating out, and this I'm going to eat around that meal. So those are some tips to kind of really help you. And then each weekend, think about what you've learned and how can you do it better next weekend. And then the banner phase, that's the top phase of the pyramid, right? You know, we're going up the pyramid. We've mastered a lot of things. If we haven't mastered the weekends and all that yet, we're still going to need to track some to continue to see what we're doing and how we're doing. But to really get to the space where we can to have total freedom, we're going to have to, you know, manage some things a little bit different and develop this level of confidence. And this is that intuitive eating. That's at the top of it. And, you know, for people who've, you know, gotten really good results and you've been very consistent over time, you even build some confidence in the scale. You build confidence in the scale. You build confidence in your MyFitnessPal or your journal or whatever you're using to log. So, you know, trusting yourself can produce a little bit of apprehension. So one of the things, this is where a coach, I mean, every level you can use a coach, but even if you're advanced, but you're still not able to pull away, coaching is going to really help because it's going to help with your mindset, you know, and mindset's going to be critical during this time frame. So maybe have one meal a day and don't track that one meal. See how your body's responding. You know, see what's happening. You know, when you go to not have that meal, do you see yourself desiring more food than normal? What's going on? Because, you know, then maybe after you do a meal a day, go a week. You know, just, you know, I like to weigh myself every day, so you can weigh yourself every morning and see how your body's changing. But just, you know, kind of, I think this feels good. And then maybe if you plan something, listen to how your body feels. Do I have more energy? Man, I ate this and I'm feeling down. You know, and as you've learned some of those skills in the past, you're now putting together your plan without even looking at a scale to measure it. Just that looks like a good portion. Maybe do one day on and one day off. There's no right or wrong answer, but you may measure one day, you may not measure another day, and you start learning it. And then, you know, the biggest thing is you don't go from I'm just learning how to track or I've been tracking consistently to total freedom. Right, you do it a little bit at a time. So baby steps, you know, is going to really help you. Do you feel like you're still in control? You know, how are you feeling? You know, are you maintaining the body composition you want? Are you still moving towards where you want? How are those habits that you developed? Are those habits still working in your favor? Or do you find yourself falling out of those habits? You know, and every once in a while you can jump back in. I think Katie said in the beginning that she doesn't track, but every once in a while she's not really sure about how much is in her chicken salad and she'll go and check. You know, and that keeps her calibrated, and that's what's going to build confidence. So, you know, we just wanted to let you guys know that there is an end to the tunnel, and you can get to a point where you're not jumping on the scale every morning because you're just comfortable and confident in your skin. You feel good in your skin. There is a place where you don't have to weigh and measure or track, but you have to earn it. It's not something that you're just going to have because you really want it. No different than your degree or your profession or anything else you've done in your life. You know, they don't just give you a diploma just because you want a diploma. You got to earn it. You know, you don't just get a paycheck because you want to get paid. You have to earn it. And similarly in fitness, if you don't earn it, I love it. We were talking about earlier. I said, there's times where I don't track all the extra food I eat. You know, so for my coach, it looks like I'm doing really good. But here's the deal. My body, whether I put it in a log or not, is going to track it. And then I have to wonder what's going on internally, why I don't want to track it, you know, in there. But, you know, once you've earned it, it puts you in a place of total freedom, and you can spend 2 years maybe mastering the skill set. You know, everybody's a little different, maybe a little less for some people, a little more for a little bit, but it's going to have this space of like, it sucks and it's unbearable and I don't want to do it anymore in the front end. And then it becomes easy and you build momentum, you know, on the back end, and then you don't have to do it at the end. And that could be the rest of your life. You know, most of the people we serve are frustrated professionals that want to feel confident in their clothes or fit their clothes better. They want to reach into the back of the closet and make the back of the closet the whole closet, you know, kind of thing. And the way they get there is by mastering these little skill sets. So hopefully this helped. I really appreciate you guys being on with us today. Definitely comment, share, like, you know, and let us know if these help you in, you know, getting through that frustration with the scale, learning the skill sets you need, and winning at the highest level. Talk to you soon. Again, Evans and Alyssa here from Senior Fit. Bye-bye.